So recently I joined a game jam with my friend who I actually met at GDC. We're both learning Unreal Engine, so we thought, why not destroy all of our confidence by joining a jam? This was our first jam using Unreal Engine, and well, this is how it went. We decided to join a week-long jam called the Beginner's Jam Halloween 2024. The theme for this jam was grave digging. Immediately, a bunch of horror games came to mind, but we kind of decided that that wasn't a genre that we really wanted to pursue. This was about the time where we realized Unreal Engine might be a little bit of a restriction, and there's kind of two main reasons why. Number one, this game kind of has to be a 3D game. Unreal Engine isn't really that great at 2D games. You could do like a top-down with 3D art, so it's like 3D, but it looks 2D. But basically, we're going to need 3D models, which is a problem because we don't have that much time to make them. The second problem is Unreal Engine does not support WebGL or HTML5 builds. For this jam, and I assume a lot of other online jams where you actually don't know the people that you're developing with, it's pretty common practice to make a playable in-browser game because, scams, right? Like downloading exe files from people you don't know is kind of not the best idea. And especially in a jam, there just isn't enough time for a beefy verification process like you might find on Steam. So anyway, we'll come back to this later because this does end up, I think, affecting the results of the project, but we just ended up being okay making an exe build. So finally, after some more restrictive brainstorming, we came up with the idea. You first talk to an NPC, they tell you in a riddle-like fashion where they want to be buried, you dig their grave, plop them in, and then move on to the next person. So now that we had an idea, we needed assets, specifically 3D modeled assets. Now, obviously we weren't going to be making these ourselves because, well, that would take way too much time. So luckily we found some low poly Halloween like graveyard packs that fit really well with our game idea. So the next day comes around and it's time to build up some simple scenes to get the gameplay working. So we worked on getting the graves working so you can actually click on them and then determining whether that's the right grave or not. We also did a little bit more kind of brainstorming on what the actual puzzles are going to be. And then we found out that, well, he is way better at level design and audio design than I am. So I worked on the shovel, which was supposed to be an interactable object that you could do multiple things with, but just ended up being a shovel. So that was kind of a waste, but hey, if there was more than a shovel, that would be a great system, okay? About midway through the jam, it was time to actually make dialogue boxes, 2D art, menus, stuff like that. And so I was kind of tasked with making 2D art. Now, I wouldn't say I'm particularly skilled in 2D art, but after like way too much time, I did come up with something that I think really fits the game. I got the inspiration for the design from another dialogue box I found, which had these distinctive 3 acorns on it. I think it's a really well put together box, and so I designed a similar box with a grave digging theme, and this is what it looks like in game. So finally, one of the other things I did was I made these little paw prints in Blender. Don't look at the topology. I know it looks awful. I'm sorry. Don't judge me, please. I just needed to get it done. But anyway, so for one of the characters, which actually now that I'm thinking about it, none of them have names in the game, but we like named all of them in our brainstorming, which is funny. We should have done that. Whoops. So anyway, for one of these ghosts called Julian, he mentions a best friend visiting him every day. From the game, you might think, oh, there's 2 graves by each other. It might be the motorcycle. But then you go over to this little garden area and you'll see these little paw prints walking up to a grave. And so it's like a cat is his best friend. Anyway, it's second to last day. This is when usually every game jam, I have this moment where I'm like, oh no. Everything is not going to work. We're not going to finish on time. This idea doesn't make any sense anymore. I like to call this the doom moment, right? Because you think, oh no, we're doomed. This is over. And usually in about 20 minutes, there is a simple solution that is found that it's like, oh, actually, no, we're fine. The doom moment for this jam happened when adding the counter on the gravestone. We wanted an indicator for how many people the player has talked to and how many they have left to talk to. This way they could know how many graves there are, and it just makes the goal a little clearer. Well, the trigger box for the grave is right next to the dialogue trigger box. So there's like this little bug where if the player is interacting with both boxes, then neither can be triggered, which is really frustrating. It was late in the jam, and so my thought was, okay, we'll just make a raycast so the player can only interact with the box that they're currently looking at. Well, this got pretty complicated, and with not much time left, I was starting to feel very overwhelmed. This was during the day that my friend was actually away at the time, so I didn't really have someone with common sense to snap me out of this dumb decision. Ultimately, I just made the graves trigger box thinner, and this fixed the issue, and it was so much quicker. Unfortunately though, the issue still kind of exists with the two graves in the forest area. We probably could have just like moved them further apart from each other, but yeah, as you can see, that didn't end up actually happening. Finally, the last day of the jam comes around. Now it's just time to polish, so we add some fog to add some more atmosphere, a little bit of bug fixing, but clearly we didn't do enough because, as you know, I literally just mentioned a bug 2 seconds ago. Finally, we make the build in Unreal Engine. We test out that everything works, and really the only thing that's weird is the lighting. And I don't know how to fix that. It looks fine, but it just doesn't look the same. But I think it does look better in the project. For the results of the jam, ultimately, I think I learned a bunch. I think we worked really well together, and we made something that I'm actually genuinely quite happy with. For our placement, we got 18th place, which I think is a little bit lower than I would have wanted or expected. And I think part of that comes with the thing I was mentioning earlier where we had to make it an executable. And so it actually got quite a few less ratings. The median rating for this jam was 9 ratings for each game. And we got 7, which means we got below the median, which means we got a penalty on our score. So if you get less than the median, then you just get a penalty on your scores, which kind of makes sense. So last thing, is Unreal Engine a good engine for game jams? I think so. But provided you know like 3 things. Number 1, you'll need to make an executable build, obviously, right? You won't be able to play it in the browser because, at least for version 5.4 of Unreal, it's just not supported. The second thing, you'll probably have to find or make your own 3D assets because Unreal Engine is not great for making 2D games. It's not impossible, but it's not really a competitor in the 2D space, as far as I know. And finally, C++ is probably just going to be completely disregarded. You're probably going to make it totally in blueprints because it's just quicker to iterate and it's often more flexible to work with. You could definitely convert things to C++ later, but for a game jam, I don't know. I'd like to like put the name tags of the characters in the game or, finish the game actually. So anyway, that's how it went. I'm quite happy with what we made, and shout out to Mighty Boosh UK, my friend who helped me to make this game. I'll leave you with the awesome main menu song that he made. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you later.